There are places in New Mexico where the past refuses to fit neatly into the history books. Ancient cities carved from stone, petroglyphs whose meanings remain a mystery, and structures aligned with celestial events in ways that suggest advanced knowledge long before it should have existed. Before we dive in, here's a quick note. The visuals in this video aren't necessary to enjoy the stories. They make the journey more immersive, but you can follow everything through audio alone. Deep within the sun-baked high desert of northwestern New Mexico, a silent city whispers secrets across 1,000 years. Chaco Canyon. It rises abruptly from the arid landscape, not a city in the modern sense, but a sprawling complex of monumental stone structures known as great houses. Pueblo Bonito, Chetro Kettle, Casa Rinconada, their names evoke a grandeur that still resonates. But the true mystery of Chaco Canyon isn't just its scale, impressive as it is. It lies in the sky above. The ancient builders, ancestors of modern Pueblo peoples, didn't just construct buildings. They seemingly built a vast, intricate calendar and observatory aligned with celestial precision. How did people 1,000 years ago, without written records or advanced tools we recognize, achieve such astronomical accuracy? What drove them to bind their architecture so intimately to the cosmos? Walking through Chaco Canyon today, the sheer scale of the great houses is humbling. Pueblo Bonito alone contained over 600 rooms, stood several stories tall, and required thousands of tons of sandstone blocks, meticulously shaped and fitted. Timber for roof beams and upper stories was hauled from mountains over 50 miles away. This speaks of immense coordinated effort, a complex society operating centuries before European contact. But look beyond the walls. Look at the layout. Archaeoastronomers, scientists who study ancient astronomy, have made astonishing discoveries. Key buildings and features aren't randomly placed. They are deliberately positioned to capture specific moments in the dance of the sun, moon, and stars. Consider the sun dagger on Fajada Butte. High on this imposing mesa, 3 large stone slabs lean against the cliff face. Behind them, spiral petroglyphs are carved into the rock. For centuries, this arrangement remained unnoticed. Then, in the late 1970s, researchers observed a remarkable phenomenon. At precisely noon during the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, a dagger-shaped beam of sunlight slices perfectly through the center of the largest spiral. During the winter solstice, the shortest day, 2 beams of light precisely bracket the same spiral. The equinoxes, when day and night are equal, sunlight bisects a smaller spiral nearby. This isn't random. It's a sophisticated solar calendar etched in stone and light, marking the critical turning points of the year with uncanny precision. The alignments extend far beyond Fajada Butte. The massive walls of Pueblo Bonito itself are aligned along a precise north-south axis, deviating less than half a degree, an accuracy rivaling modern surveys. The Great Kiva Casa Rinconada, a massive circular subterranean chamber central to ceremony, has opposing doorways aligned with the cardinal directions. Its internal features may have tracked lunar cycles. Other buildings align with the rising or setting of significant stars, or the moon at its extreme northern and southern positions on the horizon, events that only occur every 18.6 years. How did they know? How did they plan structures that would only reveal their full purpose generations later? The complexity suggests generations of accumulated knowledge, passed down orally and encoded in the very landscape. Then there are the roads. Chaco wasn't isolated. A network of remarkably straight, engineered roads, some over 30 feet wide and extending for dozens, even hundreds of miles, connected the canyon to distant communities. But many of these roads seem to lead nowhere significant on the earthly plane. Intriguingly, some prominent roads align with significant celestial events. The Great North Road, stretching perfectly straight for miles, points directly to the North Celestial Pole. Was this a symbolic pathway to the heavens, a physical representation of a cosmic connection? The purpose remains debated, adding another layer of astronomical intent. The question burns: why? Why expend such colossal effort to align their world so precisely with the cosmos? Mainstream archaeology suggests it was central to their cosmology, ritual, and agriculture. Knowing solstices and equinoxes was vital for planting and harvesting in this harsh environment. Tracking the complex lunar cycle was likely crucial for ceremonial calendars. The sky was their clock, their calendar, and perhaps the realm of their deities. Building their world in harmony with these celestial rhythms affirmed their place in the universe. But the sheer precision achieved, the long-term planning required for lunar standstill alignments, continues to astonish and puzzle scientists. Did they possess astronomical knowledge far deeper than we credit them for? Was Chaco Canyon more than a cultural center? Was it an ancient university of the skis, a place where celestial knowledge was concentrated and celebrated? The silent stones of Chaco hold their secrets close, leaving us to marvel at a celestial city whose builders understood the stars in ways we are only beginning to decode. Imagine the scene. New Mexico over 12,000 years ago. The landscape is alien, dominated by vast grasslands and creatures we now call megafauna, giant ground sloths, towering mammoths, powerful bison, and living among them, humans. For decades, the story of humans in North America began with the Clovis culture, dated to around 13,000 years ago, identified by their distinctive fluted spear points. But then came Folsom. A discovery not only pushed human presence back further, but revealed a hunt for the most colossal creatures of the Ice Age. Yet, the very evidence of this triumph, the Folsom Point, vanished from the archaeological record for thousands of years. Why? What happened to the people who wielded these deadly, beautiful weapons against giants? The mystery begins near the small town of Folsom, New Mexico, in 1926. Cowboys investigating a gully after a heavy storm stumbled upon enormous bones. Recognizing their significance, they called in scientists. What they unearthed was revolutionary. Embedded firmly between the ribs of an extinct species of giant bison, Bison antiquus, was a stone spear point unlike any seen before. It was exquisitely crafted, relatively small, leaf-shaped, and crucially, it had a distinctive flute. A long, slender flake chipped out from the base on both sides, running up the center. This flute allowed the point to be securely hafted onto a spear shaft. This was the Folsom Point, and its position left no doubt. Humans had hunted and killed this massive beast. Radiocarbon dating later placed this event at around 12,600 years ago, proving humans were successfully hunting large game in North America centuries before the classic Clovis culture emerged. Folsom Points represent a pinnacle of ancient stone tool technology, making one required incredible skill and knowledge. The knapper had to select the right type of high-quality stone, often chert or obsidian. Then came the delicate, precise process, carefully shaping the perform with controlled blows, and finally, the breathtakingly risky act of fluting. Striking the base just right to detach that long, thin flake without shattering the entire point demanded exceptional expertise. A single mistake meant hours of work ruined. These weren't crude tools. They were masterpieces of functional art, designed for maximum penetration and lethality against massive, dangerous prey. They speak of a sophisticated understanding of materials, physics, and anatomy. Discoveries across the Great Plains and Southwest, often associated with the bones of extinct bison, confirmed Folsom people were widespread and successful big-game hunters for several centuries. They adapted to the harsh post-ice age environments, following the herds. But then, around 12,200 years ago, something happened. The Folsom Points vanished. For roughly 1,000 years, the archaeological record across much of North America shows a dramatic decline or complete absence of such finely crafted, fluted spear points. It's as if the knowledge, the technology, and the people who mastered it simply faded away. What caused this technological dark age? Theories abound, each as haunting as the silence in the ground. The most dramatic points to a catastrophe. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggests a comet or asteroid exploded over North America around 12,800 years ago, triggering massive wildfires, a sudden plunge back into Ice Age conditions, and widespread extinctions. The climate chaos and destruction of habitats could have shattered Folsom societies, disrupted knowledge transmission, and made their specialized bison hunting impossible. Did they perish in this cataclysm? Another theory points to the extinction itself. As the megafauna, the mammoths, the giant bison Folsom hunters relied on dwindled and vanished due to climate change, human hunting pressure, or both. The need for such specialized, large-game hunting weapons disappeared. Perhaps simpler, more versatile tools replaced the labor-intensive Folsom Points as people shifted to hunting smaller game and gathering. Could the knowledge have been lost gradually? Perhaps Folsom groups were small, scattered bands. Social disruption, conflict, or even a slow migration away from traditional hunting grounds could have fragmented communities, making it harder to pass on the highly specialized skill of fluting. Maybe a newer technology, better suited to changing prey or environments, simply made Folsom Points obsolete, and the old ways were forgotten. The thousand-year gap remains deeply puzzling. Did pockets of knowledge survive, hidden in areas we haven't excavated? Was the technology reinvented later, leading to different styles like Clovis, though Clovis points are generally larger and appear earlier or concurrently in some regions? The Folsom Point is a testament to human ingenuity and courage in the face of Ice Age giants. Its sudden mastery and even more sudden disappearance pose a profound question. How can such advanced knowledge, vital for survival, simply vanish from an entire continent for a millennium? The answers, much like the mammoths themselves, remain elusive, buried in the deep layers of New Mexico's ancient soil. High in the rugged Mogollon Mountains of southwestern New Mexico, hidden within the shadowed alcoves of sheer canyon walls, lie the silent stone rooms of the Gila Cliff Dwellings. Built over 7 centuries ago, these structures cling to the cliffs like swallows' nests, 46 rooms crafted from local stone and timber, sheltered deep within natural caves. For generations, the Chilerosa phase people thrived here. Archaeologists find evidence of vibrant life, beautifully painted pottery, intricate woven baskets, stone tools, and the remnants of hearths that once warmed families against the high desert chill. They farmed corn, beans, and squash on the canyon floor below, gathered wild plants, and hunted game in the surrounding forests. It was a life carefully adapted to this secluded, defensible fortress. Then, around the year 1300, something profound happened. Within the span of a single generation, perhaps even less, every single person packed up and left. They walked away from their homes, leaving behind cooking pots, tools, even precious seed corn stored in sealed jars. Why? What could drive an entire community to abandon their hard-built sanctuary, vanishing so completely into the mists of time? The departure was deliberate, yet the reason remains one of New Mexico's most haunting puzzles. There are no signs of violent conflict, no mass graves, no burned structures, no scattered weapons. The dwellings weren't destroyed, they were simply vacated, left remarkably intact for modern explorers to discover. This peaceful abandonment rules out invasion from hostile neighbors as the primary cause. So what pressures became so overwhelming that leaving everything behind was the only option? One compelling theory points to environmental strain. Tree ring data, those ancient chroniclers of climate, reveal a period of significant drought gripping the Southwest around the late 1300s. For people reliant on rainfall to nourish their canyon-bottom fields, years of failed crops could spell disaster. Water sources may have dwindled, game become scarce. The very seclusion that offered protection could have become a trap as resources diminished. Did the life-sustaining balance of the canyon ecosystem finally tip? Yet drought alone may not tell the whole story. Resource depletion could have played a role. Building and maintaining fires for warmth and cooking required vast amounts of timber. Over generations, the easily accessible forests surrounding the canyon might have been exhausted, forcing people to travel farther and farther for firewood, an exhausting and time-consuming task. Could the simple act of staying warm have become unsustainable? Social or spiritual factors might also have been at play. Archaeologists note subtle shifts in pottery styles and architecture in the decades before abandonment, hinting at possible cultural changes or external influences. Did new religious ideas or social pressures draw people towards larger communities elsewhere? Perhaps knowledge of emerging pueblos like the Zuni or Hopi, with their larger populations and different ways of life, offered a perceived stability that the isolated cliff dwellings could not. Another intriguing possibility involves a gradual breakdown in the community itself. Living in such close quarters within the caves, reliant on shared resources and cooperation, could have led to tensions over time. Disputes over farming plots, storage space, or leadership might have fractured the social fabric. Did internal conflict make staying unbearable? Or conversely, did a shared spiritual belief or omen compel them to leave together? Some oral traditions from descendant Pueblo communities speak of migrations driven by spiritual necessity, a need to seek a center place ordained by their ancestors. Could a directive from spiritual leaders have prompted this mass exodus? The Gila Cliff Dwellings stand as a poignant monument to human resilience and adaptation. Their perfectly preserved rooms, the fingerprints still visible in the dried mortar, the grinding stones resting where they were last used, they offer an incredibly intimate snapshot of life. But they also offer a profound silence. The echoes of the last footsteps leaving those caves have long faded, leaving us only with the enduring mystery of why this mountain stronghold, once a haven, became a place to be left behind. Where did they go, and what stories did they carry with them into the unknown? Scattered across the high desert plains and forested slopes once inhabited by the Mogollon culture in southwestern New Mexico, enigmatic structures of stone rise from the earth. These are not the towering cliff dwellings, but something arguably more perplexing. Intricate, carefully constructed circles and geometric patterns made from hundreds, sometimes thousands, of basalt or limestone rocks. Found in isolated locations, often with breathtaking vistas, these circles range from just a few feet across to impressive rings nearly 100 feet in diameter. Some are simple outlines, while others feature complex internal patterns, radiating lines, or associated cairns. Dating primarily between 900 and 600 years ago, they stand as silent monuments to a people's ingenuity and purpose. But what purpose? Were they foundations for vanished homes, sacred spaces for ceremony, or perhaps sophisticated calendars tracking the heavens? The true function of these Mogollon stone circles remains deeply contested, a riddle etched in rock. The first, most practical explanation is that they form the bases for dwellings. Archaeologists call these potential foundations walled pit houses. The idea is that vertical posts were set along the stone circle, supporting a roof structure that was then covered with earth, creating a semi-subterranean home. Some circles do contain central hearths, supporting this domestic theory. Yet, significant problems arise. Many circles are built on steep slopes or rocky outcrops utterly unsuitable for habitation. Others lack any evidence of a roof structure. No post holes, no collapsed roofing material, no domestic debris like pottery shards or tools typically found in Mogollon village sites. Why build a perfect, labor-intensive stone circle on an impractical, windswept ridge if it was just a house foundation? The locations often seem deliberately chosen for visibility or alignment, not comfort. This leads to the compelling theory that these circles held profound ritual or ceremonial significance. Their frequent placement on high points, offering panoramic views of sacred mountains or the horizon, suggests they were places of power, connection, or vision-seeking. The effort involved in gathering and precisely placing countless heavy stones speaks of communal activity driven by shared belief, not mere utility. Could they have been dance plazas for ceremonies, their circular shape symbolizing the cosmos or the cycle of life? Were they spaces for storytelling, initiation rites, or councils? Some circles feature unusual internal features, single large boulders, small cairns, or lines pointing towards specific landmarks. Do these mark ritual focal points or astronomical alignments? The absence of domestic clutter strengthens the idea these were special places, set apart from daily life. The most tantalizing possibility is that these circles functioned as celestial observatories. Archaeoastronomers have studied several Mogollon circles, searching for alignments with solstice sunrises, sunset points, or significant stars. Preliminary investigations at some sites reveal intriguing correlations. A gap in a circle might frame the rising sun on the summer solstice. A prominent rock within a circle could cast a shadow touching a specific point on the winter solstice. A line of rocks might point directly to a major star on the horizon at a key time of year. If proven consistent, this would mean the Mogollon possessed sophisticated astronomical knowledge, embedding it within their landscape. Tracking the sun and stars was crucial for agriculture, ceremonial timing, and understanding their place in the universe. Building permanent stone markers would codify this knowledge, allowing it to be passed down and observed communally. However, confirming these alignments requires precise surveying and accounting for centuries of potential soil movement or rock displacement. Not every circle shows clear alignments, and some may have served multiple purposes, ritual spaces incorporating astronomical markers. The Mogollon stone circles resist easy categorization. They are too numerous and carefully made to be accidental piles. They are often in the wrong places for simple homes. Their potential celestial connections hint at a deep understanding of the sky. Were they places to live, to pray, or to watch the stars? Perhaps they were all three, or something else entirely, a purpose lost with the voices that built them. Their silent stones continue to guard their secrets on New Mexico's windswept mesas. On the western face of Hidden Mountain, just south of Los Lunas, New Mexico, lies a massive basalt boulder. Etched into its dark, weathered surface are rows of strange, angular characters. To the untrained eye, they might look like random scratches or Native American petroglyphs. But in the late 19th century, a professor recognized something astonishing. The characters appeared to be ancient writing. Not just any writing, but a form of Paleo-Hebrew script, the alphabet used in the ancient kingdoms of Israel and Judah centuries before the Common Era. The inscription, now known as the Los Lunas Decalogue Stone, seems to transcribe a version of the Ten Commandments. If authentic, this would be one of the most revolutionary archaeological discoveries in the Americas, suggesting transoceanic contact from the ancient Near East long before Columbus or even the Vikings. But is it real? Or an elaborate, centuries-old hoax? The debate surrounding this lonely desert inscription is as heated as the New Mexico sun. The inscription itself is compelling at first glance. The characters bear a strong resemblance to known Paleo-Hebrew letters from the First Temple period, roughly 700 to 600 years before the Common Era. The text, while containing some unusual spellings and grammatical variations, broadly follows the Ten Commandments as found in the Book of Exodus. It includes prohibitions against idolatry, taking God's name in vain, adultery, theft, murder, and coveting, along with directives about the Sabbath and honoring parents. The style suggests it was carved using a metal chisel, a tool not typically associated with pre-Columbian cultures in the region. Proponents of authenticity argue that the specific forms of certain letters, the apparent archaic grammar, and the overall composition point to a genuine ancient inscription, likely carved by a small group of lost Semitic voyagers. However, mainstream archaeology and linguistics raise profound objections. The primary issue is context. There is no supporting archaeological evidence whatsoever. No artifacts from the ancient Near East, no pottery, tools, weapons, or settlement remains have ever been found anywhere in the vicinity, or indeed, anywhere in the pre-Columbian Americas. The inscription exists in total isolation. Furthermore, detailed linguistic analysis reveals significant problems. While the letters look Paleo-Hebrew, The text exhibits grammatical errors and idiosyncrasies inconsistent with known ancient Hebrew inscriptions. Some characters appear anachronistic, blending forms from different time periods. The language seems more like a modern attempt to mimic ancient Hebrew using a dictionary than a genuine product of an ancient Hebrew speaker. The presence of apparent Greek letters mixed in further complicates the picture. The case for a hoax is strong. The inscription was first documented by non-specialists in the 1880s, but local lore suggests it might have been known to Spanish explorers centuries earlier, though evidence is anecdotal. The most plausible scenario is that it was carved sometime in the 19th century. New Mexico had a significant population of crypto-Jews, descendants of Sephardic Jews who fled the Spanish Inquisition, often practicing their faith in secret. Could a knowledgeable individual among them have carved the inscription? Or perhaps a bored scholar, a miner, or even a local rancher with access to reference materials? The relative freshness of some of the carving compared to nearby, genuinely ancient Native American petroglyphs noted by early observers also suggests a later date. Scientific dating attempts have been inconclusive. Lichen growth and weathering rates are difficult to interpret definitively on a single, exposed surface. The Los Lunas inscription remains an enigma. It is either a world-shattering relic proving ancient transoceanic contact, or an exceptionally well-executed and enduring hoax. Without corroborating evidence or definitive dating, the massive boulder on Hidden Mountain keeps it secret, a cryptic message from either the ancient past or the more recent frontier, challenging our understanding of history in the New Mexico desert. Rising like ancient castles from the vast, dry plains east of the Rio Grande in central New Mexico stand the imposing ruins of the Salinas Pueblos, Quarry, Abo, and Gran Quivira. These were not small villages, but major centers of trade and culture inhabited by ancestral Puebloan peoples, ancestors of modern Tiwa and Tempero speakers, and later influenced by Spanish missions. At their peak around the 1600s, these communities thrived in a challenging semi-arid environment, demonstrating remarkable sophistication, particularly in managing their most precious resource, water. They built intricate systems of check dams, terraces, and reservoirs to capture and conserve every precious drop of rainfall and runoff. They understood their land deeply. Yet by the late 1670s, all three pueblos and the Spanish missions nestled within them were completely abandoned. A devastating drought, the Great Drought recorded in tree rings as lasting over 20 years, is the prime suspect. But this raises a profound question. Why did communities renowned for their water management skills utterly collapse in the face of a drought, even one so severe? How did their carefully honed resilience fail them? The Salinas people were undeniably masters of adaptation. Their check dams, built across arroyos, slowed rushing floodwaters after storms, allowing sediment to settle and water to percolate into the ground, recharging aquifers and creating pockets of fertile soil. Terraces carved into hillsides captured rainwater runoff, preventing erosion and creating level planting areas. At Gran Quivira, archaeologists have identified potential reservoirs designed to hold captured water. Their agriculture was diverse, relying not just on rainfall-dependent corn, beans, and squash, but also on drought-tolerant crops like agave, mezcal. They practiced extensive trade, exchanging salt mined from nearby salt lakes, cotton textiles, and bison products from the plains for resources from other regions. This complexity suggests a significant buffer against normal dry cycles. The Great Drought that began around the 1660s, however, was exceptional. Tree rings show it was one of the most severe and prolonged droughts in the last 1,000 years. Annual rainfall plummeted far below what even the most efficient water harvesting systems could compensate for. Springs dried up, aquifers dropped. Check dams sat useless without runoff to capture. Crops failed year after year. Famine became inevitable. The archaeological record shows clear signs of stress, malnutrition evident in skeletal remains, increased conflict, defensive structures built within pueblos, and a dramatic drop in population well before the final abandonment. The environment itself was breaking down. But drought alone might not have been the sole executioner. The arrival of the Spanish in the early 1600s introduced powerful new pressures. Spanish demands for labor, the encomienda system, and tribute, often in the form of precious food and cotton blankets, diverted crucial resources and manpower away from essential subsistence activities like farming and water system maintenance. Spanish livestock, cattle, sheep, goats, introduced overgrazing, damaging the fragile grasslands and watersheds the Salinas people depended upon, potentially accelerating the environmental degradation caused by the drought. European diseases, to which the native population had no immunity, swept through communities, further decimating their numbers and weakening their ability to respond to the crisis. Social and spiritual disruption was immense. The suppression of traditional Puebloan religion by Franciscan missionaries fractured cultural cohesion and undermined the spiritual frameworks that had guided their relationship with the land and cycles of drought for centuries. Faced with unrelenting environmental catastrophe, resource extraction, disease, and cultural upheaval, the intricate systems that sustained the Salinas Pueblos reached a catastrophic tipping point. Their sophisticated water management, a triumph of adaptation, was ultimately overwhelmed by a convergence of unprecedented natural disaster and devastating human pressures. By 1678, the once bustling plazas of Quarry, Abo, and Gran Quivira were silent, leaving only imposing stone walls and the enduring puzzle of resilience pushed beyond its limit. Imagine a vast, circular mountain meadow, 13 miles wide, ringed by forested peaks. This is the Valles Caldera in north-central New Mexico, the collapsed heart of a dormant supervolcano. It's a landscape of stunning beauty and incredible abundance. Lush grasslands perfect for game, numerous hot springs providing warmth and minerals, obsidian flows yielding prized volcanic glass for tools, fresh water streams, and sheltered valleys. It seems like an ideal haven for ancient peoples. Yet, unlike almost every other major landscape feature in the Southwest, the Valles Caldera holds a profound silence. Systematic archaeological surveys reveal strikingly little evidence of permanent habitation before the Spanish colonial era. Where are the pit houses, the Pueblo ruins, the pottery scatters? Why did ancient peoples largely avoid this apparent paradise? The absence of humans in such a resource-rich zone is a mystery echoing across the meadows. The resources within the caldera were undeniably known and utilized. Archaeologists find evidence of temporary campsites, mostly around the periphery. People certainly ventured in. They hunted the abundant elk, deer, and bison that grazed the grasslands. They quarried the high-quality obsidian from the Cerro del Medio and other flows within the caldera. This obsidian has been found in sites across New Mexico and beyond, proving it was a major source. They likely gathered plants and perhaps used the hot springs. But these were short-term forays, hunting trips, resource-gathering expeditions. There is a conspicuous lack of the foundations of permanent dwellings, substantial storage pits, or dense midden deposits, trash heaps, that characterize year-round villages. It seems people came, took what they needed, and left. Why not stay? One compelling theory revolves around the very geology that created this abundance. The Valles Caldera is a restless giant. Though dormant for tens of thousands of years, it remains geologically active. Seismic tremors, though usually small, are relatively common. Fumaroles vent steam, and the hot springs are a constant reminder of the immense heat beneath the surface. For ancient peoples attuned to the power of the earth, this landscape might have radiated a palpable sense of power and danger. Could it have been perceived as a sacred, powerful, but ultimately unpredictable and potentially dangerous place? The domain of powerful spirits or deities, unsuitable for permanent settlement. Oral traditions from neighboring Pueblo communities often speak of powerful, sometimes perilous, spiritual forces associated with specific mountains and volcanic landscapes. The caldera may have fallen into this category, a place to visit with respect, but not to dwell within. Another practical explanation focuses on the high elevation. The caldera floor sits around 8,600 feet above sea level, with the surrounding peaks reaching over 11,000 feet. Winters are long, harsh, and snowy. Growing the traditional corn, beans, and squash that sustained southwestern cultures would have been extremely difficult, if not impossible, due to the short growing season and risk of early frosts. While the grasslands supported large game, relying solely on hunting and gathering at this altitude, especially through winter, would have been precarious. The caldera might have been an excellent summer resource zone for groups based at lower, more agriculturally viable elevations around the edges, but unsustainable as a permanent home. The isolation could also have been a factor. While resource-rich, the caldera is surrounded by high mountain passes. In an era of potential conflict or raiding, a settlement deep within the bowl might have felt vulnerable, too far from allies or defensible positions on higher ground. The open meadows offered little natural protection compared to canyon rims or mesa tops favored by ancestral Puebloans. Furthermore, the very abundance of obsidian, a highly valuable trade commodity, might have made the caldera a contested zone, a place where different groups came to gather resources but avoided establishing permanent claims to prevent conflict. The Valles caldera stands as a monument to nature's bounty. Its hot springs steam, its meadows bloom, its obsidian glistens. Yet the deep past here whispers not of home, but of careful visitation. The ancient peoples of New Mexico clearly knew its value, but chose to respect its boundaries, leaving the heart of the supervolcano largely untouched, a beautiful enigma of avoidance in a land often defined by human adaptation. Tucked away on the western slopes of the Sacramento Mountains in south-central New Mexico, the Three Rivers Petroglyph site presents an overwhelming visual puzzle. Across a rugged basalt ridge stretching over 50 acres, more than 21,000 individual carvings stare out from the dark rock faces. Created primarily by the Jornada Mogollon people between about 900 and 1,400 years ago, this is one of the largest and most concentrated collections of petroglyphs in the entire Southwest. You find geometric patterns, spirals, zigzags, grids, and dots. You find animals, birds in flight, bighorn sheep, snakes, and deer. You find stylized human figures, some masked, some holding objects, some engaged in scenes. You find abstract symbols unlike anything seen elsewhere. The sheer density and variety are staggering. Yet, despite decades of study, no one can definitively say what it all means. Why was this specific, relatively isolated ridge transformed into such a monumental canvas? What messages were the artists conveying across the centuries? Three Rivers is a library of stone, written in a code we are still struggling to decipher. The isolation is key to the mystery. Unlike many rock art sites associated with large villages or obvious ceremonial structures, Three Rivers has no substantial habitation site nearby. There are small temporary campsites, but no evidence of a major pueblo adjacent to this vast gallery. This suggests the site itself held a primary, perhaps singular, significance beyond daily life. People came here specifically to carve. Was it a sacred landscape, a place of power? The ridge offers panoramic views towards the distant Sierra Blanca Peak, a mountain often considered sacred by native peoples in the region. This alignment hints at a possible spiritual or cosmological connection. The act of carving itself, pecking through the dark desert varnish to reveal the lighter rock beneath, might have held ritual importance, a way to connect with the spirit world or record visions. Interpreting the symbols is the core challenge. Some motifs are widespread across the Southwest. Spirals are often associated with migration journeys, water sources, or celestial bodies. Zigzags might represent lightning, serpents, or water. Masks likely depict ritual personae or kachina spirits. Scenes showing hunters and animals could be records of successful hunts, prayers for abundance, or mythological narratives. However, the sheer number of unique or highly stylized symbols at Three Rivers complicates this. Are clusters of dot star maps, Do intricate geometric patterns represent complex philosophical concepts or clan symbols now lost? Are the numerous humanoid figures with exaggerated features depicting deities, ancestors, or participants in specific ceremonies? Without a cultural Rosetta Stone, a direct link to the specific meanings intended by the Jornada Mogollon, interpretations remain educated guesses, often influenced by later Puebloan traditions. Several theories attempt to explain the site's purpose. One posits it as a vast ceremonial center. Different clans or religious societies might have had designated areas to carve their specific symbols during rituals or pilgrimages. The cumulative effect over centuries created the dense concentration. Another theory views it as a cosmological map, where the placement of symbols relates to astronomical events or sacred geography visible from the ridge. A third possibility is that it served as an educational or historical record, a place where stories, clan histories, migration routes, and survival knowledge were encoded in the rock for future generations. The presence of some symbols carved directly over older ones suggests a dynamic living site where meanings might have evolved over time. The why here question persists. Was it the specific geology of the basalt, providing an ideal canvas, the spiritual energy attributed to the location? Its position as a boundary or crossroads between different groups? The Three Rivers petroglyphs resist a single explanation. They are a testament to a deep human need to mark the landscape, to communicate, to connect with something beyond the everyday. Walking among the thousands of figures, you feel the weight of unanswered questions. Each carving is a voice from the past, speaking in symbols we can see but cannot fully hear, an enduring enigma etched in stone on a New Mexico ridge. High on a ridge overlooking the Glorieta Pass in northern New Mexico, the ruins of Pecos Pueblo, secluded, stand as a testament to centuries of cultural confluence. This was a major hub, a crossroads where Puebloan, Plains Indian, and eventually Spanish worlds intersected. Among its many archaeological treasures, one discovery stands out for its vibrant color and profound mystery. Deep within the layers of the Pueblo's sacred kivas, archaeologists found fragments of a stunning blue paint. Analysis revealed something astonishing. This wasn't just any blue. It was ultramarine, a pigment historically made from the rare and immensely valuable semi-precious stone, lapis lazuli. Traditionally, true ultramarine came from a single source in the mountains of modern-day Afghanistan. It was more precious than gold in medieval Europe and Asia, traded along vast networks reaching the Mediterranean and beyond. How did this exotic pigment, requiring a journey of thousands of miles across continents and oceans, end up in an ancient kiva in New Mexico centuries before documented European contact? The blue paint of Pecos is a tiny speck of color that challenges our understanding of pre-Columbian connections. The context is crucial. The ultramarine pigment wasn't found in a Spanish colonial context at Pecos, which was established in the early 1600s. It was found in layers associated with the ancestral Pecos Pueblo, dating back to the 14 or early 1500s, a century or more before Coronado's expedition reached the area in 1540. This predates sustained European presence in the Americas. The pigment was used in sacred contexts, likely adorning ceremonial objects, murals within the kivas, or perhaps applied to dancers during rituals. This wasn't trade trinket, it held deep spiritual significance. The chemical fingerprint was unmistakable. Lazurite, the key blue mineral in lapis lazuli, confirming its identity as true ultramarine. The presence of such an exotic material demands an explanation. How could it have arrived? The most radical theory suggests direct, but unknown pre-Columbian transoceanic contact. Could a ship from Asia, carrying lapis lazuli or the pigment itself, have reached the Pacific coast of Mexico or even further north? Could the material have then been traded overland through intricate, far-reaching networks connecting Mesoamerica to the American Southwest? While evidence for such direct contact remains elusive, The sheer distance and complexity of overland trade routes from Afghanistan to North America seems staggering, though not impossible given the known reach of other trade goods like shells and turquoise. A more nuanced theory focuses on potential but incredibly rare alternative sources. While Afghanistan was the dominant source, tiny deposits of lapis lazuli exist in other locations: Chile, Siberia, Italy, and even Colorado. Could the Pecos pigment have come from one of these? The Chilean source, though geographically closer, wasn't known to be exploited in pre-Columbian times. The Colorado source near Crested Butte contains lapis, but geological analysis suggests it lacks the specific mineral composition, particularly the presence of the mineral wollastonite, found in the Afghan material and crucially, in the Pecos samples. The chemical signature pointed strongly back to the Old World source. Did the Pecos people possess knowledge of a small, now forgotten or exhausted New World source with a similar composition? So far, none has been found. The most plausible, yet still complex, explanation involves astonishingly long-distance, multi-step trade networks operating over centuries. Lapis lazuli was traded eastward from Afghanistan into China and across Asia. It was also traded westward into the Mediterranean world and North Africa. Could fragments of lapis lazuli or processed ultramarine pigment have traveled across Eurasia, perhaps reaching the Atlantic coast of Europe or Africa? Could it then have been carried, possibly by early, unrecorded European explorers or fishermen venturing to the New World before Columbus, and entered native trade networks? Or perhaps it arrived via trans-Pacific routes, traded through Asia, across the Bering Strait, and down through North America. While the distances are mind-boggling, we know other rare materials like Baltic amber and Mediterranean copper occasionally turn up in unexpected places. The pigment's sacred use at Pecos suggests it arrived not as bulk trade, but as a minuscule quantity of immense ritual value, perhaps passed hand-to-hand over generations and vast distances. The lost blue paint of Pecos Pueblo remains a vibrant enigma. It's a whisper of connections spanning continents, evidence that the ancient world might have been more interconnected, or that rare treasures traveled farther than our histories have yet fully grasped. How this sacred blue truly journeyed to a New Mexico kiva remains a story written in chemistry, but lost to time. The muddy banks of the Rio Grande in central New Mexico hold centuries of history, washing down from ancient pueblos and Spanish settlements. In the early 1930s, a young boy named Arthur Wright was exploring near the ruins of an old Spanish church close to the San Marshal Pueblo site south of Socorro when he made a startling discovery: a rusted, but clearly ancient, sword blade. Decades later, after passing through various hands, the blade underwent conservation and expert analysis. The conclusion was shocking. It wasn't Spanish, nor was it a later American artifact. Stylistic analysis suggested it was a gladius, the iconic short sword used by Roman legionaries. Even more astonishing, metallurgical analysis indicated it was likely forged sometime between the 1st and 3rd centuries of the Common Era, making it roughly 1,800 years old. How did a Roman sword end up buried near an ancient pueblo along a New Mexico river, centuries before the Spanish arrived and millennia before modern collectors? The Rio Grande gladius stands as one of North America's most perplexing archaeological anomalies. The sword itself is a tangible piece of history. While heavily corroded, its form is recognizable: a straight, double-edged blade approximately 20 inches long, tapering to a point, consistent with Roman infantry swords of the early imperial period. The style of the blade, particularly the shape of the tang, the part that would have been inside the handle and the shoulders, aligns with known Roman examples from Europe and North Africa. The metallurgy, showing characteristic Roman forging techniques and iron composition, further supports its ancient Roman origin. This wasn't a modern replica. It was genuinely old iron. The context of its discovery, reportedly found alone on an eroded riverbank near documented ancient and historic sites, adds to the mystery, but provides no clear archaeological context linking it directly to a specific layer or event. The presence of such an artifact in pre-Columbian New Mexico defies conventional history. Romans certainly never marched legions into the American Southwest. So how did it get there? The most obvious and often preferred explanation is that it's a relatively modern loss. Could it have been brought to the Americas by a Spanish conquistador or colonist as a curiosity or antique? While possible, the typical Spanish sword of the conquest era was the longer, narrower rapier, not a Roman gladius. There's no historical record or tradition of Spaniards carrying Roman artifacts as weapons or mementos. Could it have been brought by a 19th century European immigrant or collector fascinated by antiquities and subsequently lost? This is plausible, though the specific location near ancient ruins is curious. Why would a collector casually lose such a unique item there? More controversial theories inevitably arise. Could it be evidence of pre-Columbian transatlantic contact? Proponents suggest possibilities. A Roman ship blown off course and reaching the Americas. Roman artifacts carried across the ocean by Phoenician or later European voyagers and traded inland. Or even a lone Roman traveler somehow making the journey. However, there is a complete absence of any corroborating evidence. No Roman coins, pottery, armor, inscriptions, or settlement remains have ever been found in North America. The sword exists in utter isolation. Its condition, a single blade without a hilt, scabbard, or associated artifacts, doesn't suggest it arrived as part of an equipped soldier's gear. If it came via ancient trade networks, why only this one piece? Another possibility involves the sword being a much later artifact misidentified. While the initial analysis pointed to Roman origins, some experts have questioned whether it could be a later European blade, perhaps from the migration period or early Middle Ages, that bears a stylistic resemblance to a gladius. However, the metallurgical analysis conducted strongly supported an earlier Roman date. Could it be an incredibly well-made replica from the Renaissance or later, lost by a traveler? The metallurgy again argues against this, showing age and corrosion consistent with centuries in the ground. The Rio Grande gladius remains an enigma wrapped in rust. It is either a bizarre historical accident, a genuinely ancient Roman artifact that somehow, against all odds, found its way into the mud of the Rio Grande through unknown channels centuries after it was forged, or a misidentified object whose true origin remains elusive. Its lonely presence challenges the neat timelines of history, a silent iron question mark buried in the soil of New Mexico. New Mexico's past is filled with mysteries, some buried beneath the desert sands, some carved into ancient stone, and others hiding in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered. The stories we've explored today are only a glimpse into the strange, the unexplained, and the forgotten pieces of history that continue to baffle experts and spark debate. But the deeper we search, the more questions we uncover.